Welcome to another episode of the Sleeper Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Lehman. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure to leave a 5-star rating or review on whatever platform you're listening from, and make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes. It really helps a lot, and it's a great way to support the show. Also, please follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sleeper Dynasty. All right, guys, merch is dropping on Monday. My wife has been working really hard on the designs, and the t-shirts look so good. So please make sure to check out our social media platforms, because that's where we're going to be posting it first. And run over there and get yours and support the show. This is a very special edition of the Sleeper Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. Wyatt Phillips joins me today to react to the 2024 NFL Draft. Let's get into it. Dude, what a night. What a night. It's been crazy. So we just finished the first round of the NFL Draft. The most offensive players taken in the first round of the NFL Draft ever were taken.
Okay. I was wondering about that because I saw that on the Pat McAfee show, so I didn't know if that record had been broken or not.
6 out of the first 12 picks were quarterbacks.
That was crazy. I believe that's a new record as well. Most quarterbacks drafted, like the fastest 6 quarterbacks have been drafted.
It's gotta be. It's gotta be.
For sure. No, I know for a fact it is.
But how are you personally feeling as a Cardinals fan?
Oh man, we're gonna jump right into it. I mean, we had a great draft. Oh wow. I'll be buying a jersey very, very soon. And
Maserati Marv.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald Jr. pretty much is the way I see him.
Yeah, dude, I really feel like that was like I sent you a text as soon as it happened. I was like, you guys got to steal. Like, it's just, they made the right decision. They stayed where they were at, and I mean, now we know, like we thought it was the right decision. We knew that he was going to be drafted at that spot. Like, we had an idea, but the draft, we just needed the draft to tell us.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny because I was on the last show and I was like, I trust my organization, whatever. And I go out to eat, watch the draft with my dad and a couple friends, and I just had this feeling. I was like, man, I think I'm going to be a little bit pissed off if the Cardinals trade back. So I was really, really happy with where he went. So
yeah, I think it was, like I said, it was a good pick. But let's get into it. So chalk at the very top. Caleb Williams goes to the Chicago Bears. We've talked about that enough. We saw it coming. It was kind of just like when we saw him walk across the stage. I don't know if you kind of caught it, but I feel like his personality on the stage kind of came out. And I don't know how much you saw that, but just he genuinely, like they were making jokes about it on the stream that I was watching, but he was like speed walking, and they were talking about like he didn't run the 40 in the combine, but the man is booking it to get up to that stage.
No, I didn't catch that. Unfortunately, I watched the draft at like a pretty busy restaurant, so I was there more just for like hanging out with friends and stuff, just kind of looking at the picks. I didn't really get to hear much of what was said or anything afterwards.
No, that's cool, but it was cool to see how excited he was, and how genuinely we've heard a lot of talk and a lot of hate like about his personality, and I think there's like concerns with like, him being cocky instead of just being like confident. But I really think that seeing him on the stage and that genuine, like, we finally got there, like this is real, type thing, like you could see the excitement, and I just thought that was so cool.
I do think it was kind of funny. They took like 8 minutes to make their pick. So do you think that they were at least fielding trade offers, or do you think it was more so just like, let's start the draft slowly, we don't want to just run our pick in?
Maybe that they were just trying to, maybe it was just a dramatic pause, but I don't think. I was like expecting it to like take 4 or 5 minutes, and then it was like 8 minutes, and it seemed like it was almost 9, and it was like, okay, the pick's in, and I was like, geez, are the Bears even still on the clock? I think they knew that they were taking Caleb Williams. I don't think there was a question there, but yeah, I didn't really even notice that, but I actually tuned in as soon as they made the pick.
Okay.
So I was like, I just saw them make the pick, him booking it on the stage, the excitement, but I think that was more for just a dramatic effect for
Probably. I'm sure the NFL like told them like, hey, don't send this pick in right away. Give people time to start watching and stuff.
Yeah. So then at pick 2, the Washington Commanders take Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, pretty chalk. I really thought the NFL was going to have a different viewpoint on the two quarterbacks after Caleb Williams than the fantasy community, and I want to be like excited because I want to like the Washington Commanders quarterback, but I can't find myself like super duper pleased. Whereas if it was Drake May, I would have been like really, really happy.
So are you still down on Jaden Daniels even with the pick at number 2?
I mean, obviously you can't be down on him. You have to draft him if you're in the position to draft him. And I think I'll have a lot of research and more tape to watch now that I know where he is and stuff. And I want to come away liking him, but I still just like Drake May better. But obviously with the landing spots, you have to take Jaden Daniels over Drake May. But it's just hard for me. It's not so much hate on Jaden Daniels, even though it kind of is, but I just would have been a lot happier if it was Drake May and it was just like easy. Like if my favorite quarterback out of those two went to my favorite landing spot, but it doesn't work out the way I want it to, obviously. So that's what makes fantasy fun.
Obviously, I think the Commanders were the better landing spot of the two between the Commanders and the Patriots.
Obviously. Yeah, obviously.
I mean, for me, it just kind of confirmed that the hype that Jaden Daniels was getting leading up into the draft was real. Like it was like everybody was hyping him up, but it was kind of just like, are we sure? Because everybody's just kind of forgetting about Drake May. Now it's like, okay, it wasn't like a situation where we're all hyping this guy up and he's actually going to drop just because of how old he is. Because that was the one thing I had on Jaden Daniels was just how old he is as a prospect. Mm-hmm. And so seeing a team take him at 2, not really caring about the age. At the end of the day, like draft capital was the last piece that we need.
Yeah. You have to like him.
I mean, we got time. I got time to convince you, bro. I got time.
I have to convince myself. Myself.
No, I mean, we got time and we got the whole rest of the offseason to get hyped up about these guys. And I think that's the cool thing about the draft is right after the draft, we have all of these takes, right? And then coming into the draft, we have all these strong opinions, strong takes. And then once we have the draft, it's like, all right, forget everything you knew. Forget all of your precursor information that you have, because now we have the biggest indicator of success for fantasy, which is draft capital. So draft it's like capital. Now that we have draft capital, now we can start picking our favorite guys based off of that. But it's time to, I mean, you can still have guys that you like and you can still be high on them, but you really have to put draft capital up there as one of the most important factors.
Zach Wilson worked out great. So starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos.
And here's the deal. Even if you don't like them, the one thing is that their value is going to, especially for quarterbacks, like if you draft Jaden Daniels, his value isn't going anywhere for 2 years, even if he has the worst 2 years ever.
No, I can't even get you to trade me Bryce Young in a league. So, and I feel like I was like, hey, what would you even want? And you were like, I can't trade him, because you knew it was going to be less, obviously. So,
yeah, and I feel like I want to believe that Bryce Young will bounce back. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, it's like the floor could just drop out from under him. So that's just a really risky situation. It's almost like, man, do you just sell off of him and just move on to something else? But
well, that's hard. Anyway, we'll have to talk about those kind of players in another show. But
back to the draft. At the third overall pick, the New England Patriots select Drake May, your guy, and they a couple years after they selected Mac Jones, they decide to trade him away to the Jaguars, and they decide to use their third overall pick to get a new quarterback.
I mean, I really like Drake May. I think it's obviously going to be like tougher in New England, right? Because as of right now, they have nobody. Like Kendrick Bourne is their number one wide receiver as of right now.
It doesn't
Kayshon
look
Boutte,
good.
maybe, if he gets to play.
Booty.
I still think I'm going to end up drafting a lot of Drake May because he's going to fall in the draft because of it. Because people already don't like Drake May. People aren't going to like the landing spot. So I still think he could be like a late first like snag. Like I think there's some quarterbacks that could sneakily get ahead of Drake May in the draft. Like the further we talk about this draft, but I think I'm actually going to come away with a lot of Drake May and just try to trust him as a prospect instead of like the ideal landing spot.
Yeah, I believed in Drake May, but obviously I like Jaden Daniels more. It's good. This is where I expected him to go. So it's kind of
the first three picks have been pretty chalk so far.
It's really chalk, and to be honest with you, I think now it's like, all right, these guys, they have their value for the next couple years. Whether you like one over the other, it doesn't really matter. Like, if you really like in for example right here, like you still like Drake May, you may not like the landing spot as much, but if you like Drake May enough and you felt that much conviction about him, he's going to hold value for a couple years.
Oh, without a doubt. I will at least have one or two shares of Drake May. I feel pretty confident about it, especially because I think his price is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I probably will not have any.
You have all the
shares.
You can have all the Jaden Daniels shares you want.
I mean, if it turns out being a good value, then fine. But I'm not going to be going out of my way to get Drake May.
I understand, but I'm not going out of my way to get Jaden Daniels. So maybe I have to convince you to like Drake May.
All right, so this is the one. Pick 4, the Cardinals, get Marvin Harrison Jr. This is chalk. This is what we expected.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I don't know if it's just because I'm a Cardinals fan. I was seeing so much news and like none of it was like Marvin Harrison trading, like, or being drafted. It was all trading back from the Cardinals. And part of me loves being a Cardinals fan because the media always has this like big like grandeur like opinion of what the team is going to do, and they just never fucking do it. Like,
I kind of thought that every year we have a trade scenario that gets hyped up. Yeah. And I kind of felt like the Cardinals were that like fake trade scenario that everybody's just trying to push out content so that we can get hyped up about the draft because nothing else is going on type deal. But it was kind of not concerning, but it was kind of feeling like this is getting so much hype that it might actually happen.
Yeah, I was worried. But I mean, I think, where do you think, like just real quick, because I was trying to think about this on the way home, like where does Marvin Harrison land as like, you don't have to answer in the NFL because that's a much harder question to ask, but like, is he a top 10 dynasty wide receiver now?
I would say so. Yeah.
Just like right off the bat, like you're drafting him probably in the second round of a startup in that area.
The guy is a freak. I mean, I wonder where Jamar Chase was whenever he first came into the league.
Yeah,
because
and went to Joe Burrow.
Almost like Marvin Harrison Jr. as a prospect better than Jamar Chase. I mean, that's not really crazy to say. I mean, it may be recency bias, but I definitely think they're close as prospects.
I do feel the one thing I feel good about, because he's almost going to be an untouchable prospect, like a Bijan Robinson. He is kind of like the Bijan Robinson of last year, where like you take your quarterback or you take Bijan and like with the 1 and 2 picks, and the rest kind of pans out the way the rest does. But I am glad because I do have one league where I have the 101, 102, 103. So I do know for sure I will have Marvin Harrison in at least one league. So that makes me feel really good.
Yeah. I just like that he went to a spot with a quarterback. He's going to be catching balls from Kyler Murray. He's an athletic freak. He is I think he's the best player in the draft, and I think that if it wasn't for quarterback being the most important position in the game, he might have been the first guy taken off the board.
Yeah, I agree. But there's not much to talk about with Marvin Harrison. He's going to be an elite wide receiver prospect. He's going to be, hovering around that top 10 line. Really, he can't go up very much. His value could go down a little bit, I think, this season. But I don't know if he can really climb into that top 5 unless we have like a prolific season this year.
Yeah, I definitely think this is where we expected him to go. So
yeah. He was either going to Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert. So, I mean, when you're going to those two quarterbacks, your value can only change so much. They're two of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, I don't want to get into an argument for anything, but two really good, quarterbacks in the NFL.
So the next guy taken off the board was at pick 6, not to the Chargers, but to the Giants. Malik Neighbors comes off the board, and I was obviously I when the Chargers were picking, I was like, all right, here we go.
I thought about it too. But Joe Alt was such a good pick. And just really quickly, I'm not going to talk about Joe Alt like another prospect, but Joe Alt was such a good pick for the Chargers. And like, it's a great pick behind closed doors for fantasy because it's going to help whatever running back they have. It's also going to help the passing game with Justin Herbert to give him time. So am I a little bit upset that Malik Neighbors didn't go to the Chargers? Like, obviously he would have been much better, but the Chargers still did a really good job drafting the best offensive lineman in the draft.
Yeah, my man Jay Harbaugh, he came out and said to the media, he said, I know everybody's asking about us getting weapons, but we consider offensive tackle as a weapon.
That's such a coach's answer. It's such a coach answer.
Such a cop-out. It's a good pick for the Chargers to protect Herbert.
But yeah, I'm not upset at the Chargers for not. I'm upset, like, if I had Malik Neighbors, I would have rather him been on the Chargers. But I think Joe Alt might be a better pick for the Chargers than Malik Neighbors would have been.
Yeah, and I'm glad, compared to our mock draft that we just did, instead of Malik Neighbors falling down the board as much as he did there, that at least he only fell one pick later.
I don't know. We're going to get to that pick, and I almost wish that the Raiders would have selected Malik Neighbors. I think I would have been a little bit happier with that pick.
We'll get there. But yeah, I can talk myself into the Giants, right? Like I can see a scenario where, hey, it's like you said in the last pod, let's give Daniel Jones a chance with a weapon, a real weapon. He hasn't had this type of weapon at wide receiver. He hasn't had a one like this. So let's see what we have in Daniel Jones. Let's give him a chance, his last chance. And Malik Neighbors is going to get fed by him. There's not really anybody there to compete with targets.
No, not at all, especially with Saquon gone too. And I think you're going to see a lot of Malik Neighbors kind of being used like Deebo Samuel and kind of like some sweeps. I wouldn't be surprised to see Malik Neighbors line up in the backfield this year a few times. But you can't, if Malik Neighbors was your wide receiver 2 going into the draft, and you can obviously flip it with Rome Odunze if to your preference, but I don't think you can use Daniel Jones as a knock on Malik Neighbors right now because the Giants could have a top quarterback next year. Like Kirk Cousins went to the Falcons this year with Drake London, and then he just skyrocketed. So I still think you draft Malik Neighbors where you would have drafted him had he gone down the other team, and then you just kind of you rely on the talent.
And are we expecting the Giants to be a bad team this next year?
Yes.
So I mean that's
they're going to be throwing the ball. It could
happen.
They don't have a running back, so.
They're going to be playing from behind, so there's enough passing game right there. And then at the same time, if it doesn't work out with Daniel Jones, they just move on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm not super duper fond of it, but I still think I'm going to keep Malik Neighbors as my wide receiver 2 in the draft and just kind of have faith in him as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm keeping him at the 2 just based on talent alone. I don't think that the draft hurt his stock. It didn't necessarily make him better, in my opinion.
No,
I
it
would
didn't
have
help
much
him.
rather Justin Herbert been throwing him the ball,
Hmm.
but it's definitely not that much of a knock. This next one is probably the biggest mic drop in this draft out of the whole first round. At pick 8, the Atlanta Falcons take Michael Penix Jr. I mean, I was a Michael Penix fan, okay, but
Me too.
I don't think I'm not going to sit here and say that I was expecting him to go in the top 10. I thought there was a chance maybe he goes to a team in the first, like the Raiders and the Broncos in the middle of the first.
I thought it was more of a possibility of a team trading up at the back end of the first for Michael Penix.
My jaw was on the floor for
I
this
was
pick.
pretty surprised. I mean, I feel like we have to talk about the elephant in the room now with this draft pick.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
So apparently it was reported that he did not receive a call and wasn't notified that this pick was going to be made, and that was actually taken back by the guy who said it.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name of the guy. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah, actually.
Okay.
So Daniel Jeremiah kind of walked it back at the end
Is
of the
that
first
a big
round.
deal though if they don't tell Kirk Cousins? Like, he's brand new to the organization. He's like in his 30s. He's not going to be there forever. It's not like he's the face of the franchise. So would it have been a big deal if they didn't tell him about it? Like,
it is kind of a weird situation because you pay him as much money as you did. He had like $100 million guaranteed in his deal. So
for 2 years, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they dispersed it out over the contract, but
Yeah.
what I do know is that they paid him enough to tell him that he was going to be the guy. So I mean, I still think he's going to be the starter, but I have seen reports that his camp, Kirk Cousins' camp, was not expecting it and that they're frustrated. I don't know if those are just, I don't know how valid those claims are.
I think for me, it's more of who's going to start the season. Obviously, if Kirk Cousins is healthy, he's going to start the season. But this could have also been a pick because we all know, you hear that so much, that the most important position in football is the quarterback. And the second most important position in football is the backup quarterback. So even if Kirk Cousins is going to start there for 3 years, this isn't a bad pick in my mind. He just come off an Achilles injury, so he might not even be there week 1. They probably want to stay competitive all year long. Kirk Cousins is getting a little bit older, and this kind of just secures them. Like, hey, if Kirk isn't ready to go week 1, first of all, we don't have to rush him back. And second of all, if anything is going to happen to Kirk, we have a premier backup quarterback in the league. I mean, for all we know, he could be one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league, to sit behind Kirk Cousins to stay competitive in any situation.
And I'm not saying that Michael Penix Jr. is Patrick Mahomes.
No, he's not. Not yet, at least.
They are kind of taking the route that the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes and Alex Smith. I do feel like Alex Smith and Kirk Cousins were very similar at that time.
Very.
They're
Actually,
both
yeah.
the same type of starting caliber quarterback, and having the young guy come in, having Patrick Mahomes come in under Alex Smith is kind of a similar situation to Michael Penix coming in under Kirk Cousins. And so I do think it'll be great for his development. And I think if that's what the Falcons were kind of trying to do, is just develop a guy, it's smart, right? I mean, you just had the Packers do that with Jordan Love.
You hope that you're only going to be in that position in the top 10 a couple times, like every decade, really. As an NFL franchise, you don't ever want to be there. So you liking a quarterback when you're right there and not having to pay to go get one. And so what if he sits for 2, 3 years, 4 years? So what? When you're team doesn't have a quarterback anymore because your quarterback is, I don't know how old Kirk is, but he's got to be in his mid to late 30s. You already have the other one. You don't even have to go into a rebuild or anything. You can just keep motoring right on by, like the Packers did with Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers left.
All right, so I don't know if you saw the video that came out about this pick, but basically the GM and the owner were in the draft room and they were having a conversation, and the GM was trying to, it was almost like he was getting yelled at by the owner. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to explain to him why they took the pick. And it's inaudible. Like, you can't hear what they're saying. But it was really interesting because it's kind of how we all felt. We're like, what are you doing? Why did you just pay Kirk Cousins this money and then you go and draft Michael Penix? I thought that was just really interesting because it kind of tells you internally that there's even some weird stuff going on around this pick.
I said this in our kind of League of Record too, and it's definitely a developmental pick because I kind of had JJ McCarthy's more ready to come out and start in the NFL. And then Michael Penix is more of somebody that would really benefit from being able to sit behind and take a couple years to really hone in his talents. And so it's definitely a developmental pick. Like, I don't think nobody should be wondering if Kirk Cousins is in the hot seat or if Kirk Cousins isn't healthy or if there's something going on. I think if it was JJ McCarthy, you could maybe have those concerns. But with it being Michael Penix, I think it kind of solidifies in your mind, okay, they really like who he is. He's a little bit more raw. Let's, have him sit behind somebody that's really one of the most meh quarterbacks in the NFL in terms of personality, but let's have him sit behind him and learn some things, and then in a couple of years, 2-3 years, whatever it may be, he's going to be ready. Because I don't know if you were surprised that Michael Penix came off the board before JJ McCarthy.
I like Michael Penix more than JJ McCarthy, but I do know everybody was expecting JJ McCarthy to come off before Michael Penix. Now, the interesting thing with Michael Penix is the age, because he's older.
Yeah, he'll be 24 when the season starts.
And yeah, I mean, if he's sitting behind Kirk Cousins for a couple of years, it's not, coming from a Packers fan, it's not a Jordan Love coming in at 20 years old and then sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for 4 years. And then once he's ready, he's only 24 or 25 years old.
I don't like the age stuff on the quarterbacks. I'm fine with it at every other position, but I'm not a big fan of hating on a quarterback prospect because he's older.
And I don't. Yeah, it's kind of just something to talk about. It's not really just even. It's not that big of a deal, but it is kind of a question of, why are you bringing in this guy to sit behind a guy for a couple of years if he's already older? Like, to me, it's just like, why not just wait for maybe a better younger prospect, or even JJ McCarthy, right? Like, would you be happier with that pick if they had taken JJ McCarthy?
No, I think Michael Penix was the perfect pick for what they're trying to do. And it's like, so what if he starts in 2 years? Like, what, you get him, he'll be starting when he's 26. You have the potential to have him on your team for 15 years instead of 17 years. Like, if he pans out and is, a starting quarterback. The age thing is more of just the prospecting, really. It has nothing to do with the length of their career. But to get into the fantasy side of it, Michael Penix Jr., for redraft, it doesn't really change anything. Nothing.
Right?
He's not going to be drafted in redraft.
For redraft. No. For Dynasty, is he a first-round rookie pick?
Depending on team needs is kind of what I'd say about that. I think he's probably more of a high second-round pick. I think that you're going to get other quarterbacks that are taken ahead of him. Like, we're not going to get 6 quarterbacks in a Dynasty rookie draft. So one or two of them are going to have to fall. We're not probably going to see more than 4 or 5 in the first of a Dynasty draft, especially with some of the weapons that were drafted in the very end of the draft that we'll talk about. But I think he's more of a very, very early second, like literally 201, 202.
Yeah, my initial reaction is he's coming in to the first round, but he'll be like a late first?
I don't know if I'll be taking him in any firsts, but I would like I have the 201 and in the same league I have the 101, and it would be kind of hard to pass on him there depending on who's still available and depending on if I go quarterback throughout that draft as well.
The quarterback position is just so, for super flex leagues, it's just such a valuable position. So it's like if you were already taking him in the second round before, and I mean we were taking him at the late second probably is where he was going. So if that's where he was going before, I definitely think his value moves up. The question is where does it stop?
Like I said, I think it's going to be about like the two. I think you won't see him fall past the 203, and I don't think you'll see him drafted a lot in the first, unless it's like the 111. Because if you are rebuilding, it is valuable to have that quarterback prospect on your team. So I do think you might see him at like the 111, the 112, but I think probably his ADP, if I had to just guess right now, is probably going to be about that 2-1, 2-2.
Either way, his value is probably the biggest riser after the first round of the draft.
I don't think so. I think there's one other guy that's gonna rise more. We'll get to it.
As far as the top tier guys, though,
I don't know. I think there's going to be somebody that's now one of the top tier guys.
We'll get into it. Next guy off the board at the 109, 9th overall pick, the Bears take Rome Odunze.
I love it. I absolutely loved that pick.
I'm glad, as someone who wasn't the biggest fan of Rome Odunze, I did like Rome Odunze, and I like that he went as high as he did in the draft. Now I'm like, okay, he's not a late first round pick. He's not going to fall. So my concerns kind of went away. My only concerns really is what's the target share going to be in the Bears offense with a rookie quarterback for his first year. He's not going to lead the team in targets.
I mean, he's not going to lead the team in targets, but it's also a rookie quarterback. It's not like he's going in with somebody that's thrown the ball to DJ Moore and Keenan Allen for the last 5 years and has a new weapon. Caleb Williams is going in, and he's never had a rapport with any of these guys. So I don't think he's going to lead the team in targets, but I don't think it's out of the possibility. Like, if Rome Odunze is really that good, there is no reason why he couldn't be right up there with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore as top of the leaderboard. I mean, this is probably our most likely team to have 3,000-yard receivers this year.
We'll see about that. We'll see.
I'm just saying. I think that it's wheels up for Chicago right now. It's wheels up.
I mean, they're definitely learning from Justin Fields' situation and saying, hey, we're going to give our quarterback weapons whenever we draft our next quarterback. So it's good to see that they're giving him weapons. I mean, Caleb Williams is going to have a crazy rookie season with these guys.
Yeah, but can I put you on the spot? Because we know the landing spot, we know the quarterback situation now. Are you taking Rome Odunze or are you taking Malik Neighbors?
I'm still taking Malik Neighbors.
Okay, see, I think I would take Rome Odunze above Malik Neighbors now.
Would you take Rome Odunze over Malik Neighbors just because of the matching up with Caleb Williams there?
Yeah, I think I would, because their offense is going to be so powerful this year. Allegedly is going to be so powerful this year.
See, I'm more concerned about the target share, but I do think there is a reality. There is a reality that exists where Rome Odunze is the most talented wide receiver on that team.
I don't know if he's more talented than DJ Moore, but I do think there's a possibility where, Keenan Allen isn't on the field as much as we all thought he would be.
Well, DJ Moore was a second round pick. He has always been consistent, but he's always been a consistent 1,000-yard receiver, but he's never been, until last season,
like elite,
super elite wide receiver. And I think Rome Odunze could come in immediately. I mean, he's being picked 9th overall in a draft. I think he could come in from just a prospect standpoint and has the chance to be the best receiver on that team. But I think it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time with Caleb Williams, but at least the matching up, it does make me think about taking him over Malik Neighbors. And maybe I can get off my stubborn Malik Neighbors as my wide receiver 2 take over time.
Well, I literally think I said earlier to keep Malik Neighbors as your wide receiver 2. But that was more so just like don't phase him out completely because he went to the Giants was all I was trying to say there. And there may be situations where, I mean, there's still a lot that we have to figure out, but I'm just saying Rome Odunze definitely, whereas before I kind of had Malik Neighbors way ahead of Rome Odunze, I think they're a lot more equal now than they were before the draft.
They are. And I think you could really say those top 3 guys, like obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is in a league of his own.
I mean, he's being drafted as a first wide receiver.
Yeah, he's unquestioned. He's the one. And then now I think we have a 2A, 2B type thing. So they're definitely closer than they were for me. The Minnesota Vikings, they come up, they trade up with the Jets. They say, we're scared that the Jets are going to take a quarterback to replace Aaron Rodgers. And they come up to the 10th spot. They trade with the Jets to get JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, I love it. See, immediately I'm taking JJ McCarthy over Michael Penix.
Are you really?
Absolutely.
So I guess you could say he comes into a situation where he's going to be the guy.
Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. If you're looking at who's going to be more valuable for the first 2 years and who has the potential to gain more value, because like if you draft Michael Penix, he's not gaining value the first 2 years. If anything, he's going to lose a little bit of value each year he doesn't start. Now, that's not going to be a lot, but JJ McCarthy has the potential to beat out Drake May and Jaden Daniels as the quarterback 2 this season out of rookie quarterbacks. I don't think it's out of the question if I told you that JJ McCarthy, like, statistically was just better than Jaden Daniels or Drake May this season with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson and a terrible defense. I don't think anybody would be like, what? Like, that's crazy. How could you say that?
JJ McCarthy did come into a better spot. He came into a better situation as far as he's the guy compared to Michael Penix Jr. So if Michael Penix Jr. went over him, which he did, and didn't have Kirk Cousins, would we still be having the same conversation if Kirk Cousins wasn't there?
If Kirk Cousins wasn't in Atlanta? Would you still rather have JJ? No, I think I'd rather have Michael Penix.
See, and that's the interesting thing, because say Kirk Cousins really does have some kind of issue with his Achilles and he's not healing up as quickly as we thought. If Michael Penix comes in and is just electric with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan, and he's just the guy, it's kind of hard. It definitely moves Michael Penix up the board. I don't really think that JJ is falling at all from where he was. Like, he was going at around the 108 in rookie drafts.
Yeah, like, you were asking me if Michael Penix would go into the first, and I think Michael Penix will kind of creep around it, but I think JJ McCarthy's still locked. JJ McCarthy's probably the biggest winner in the NFL draft. Yeah, I would say JJ McCarthy's probably the biggest winner in the NFL draft. I was trying to think and think if somebody else went to like just a more luxurious landing spot with what's around them. And I think it's JJ. Just being able to have the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL right off the rip. And, you know, a great wide receiver 2 in Jordan Addison, and then one of the best tight ends in the league in TJ Hawkinson. And then you also throw on top of it, hey, we have a really crappy defense, so you're good to throw the ball a lot, don't worry.
So would you rather have JJ McCarthy at the 108, or would you rather have Michael Penix Jr. at the 201?
I'd rather have Michael Penix at the value, 201. Right? For the value, but I don't think I'm against drafting JJ McCarthy at the 108.
Right. And I think before in our draft, we were kind of fading JJ.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I got JJ McCarthy technically it was the 201, but there was some compensatory picks that we did for a new team, and I think they had a compensatory 113 and a compensatory like 2-1. So technically I didn't really draft him at the 2-1. I got JJ McCarthy at the 203, I think it would have been. So I'm really happy with where JJ went in the NFL, getting him there. I mean, I was a huge winner.
That's a steal trade, now.
I think. Yeah, it's big time.
That's definitely a steal. So, I mean, JJ McCarthy going into a great situation. This is what we wanted for JJ. If you were a JJ McCarthy fan, you couldn't have placed him in a better situation. And I mean,
unless it was the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, really. Yeah. And then they're shipping out Justin Herbert. So the next guy off the board, the Denver Broncos at pick 12, go and get their guy, Bo Nix.
Oh, yeah, their guy. And let me just assure you, it was their guy. It was nobody else's. So
can I just tell you that the video of Sean Payton congratulating his team for getting Bo Nix at the 12 was kind of just like a yeah, right. Like, come on, man.
This will probably be the shortest pick we talk about in this draft because it just doesn't change anything I have to say about Bo Nix.
I don't like Bo Nix, but I do think you still have to respect him going 12th in the first round. Listen,
I don't think so.
If you can respect Kenny Pickett going in the 20s and everybody got hyped up about him, he's still going to have value.
He'll have value on somebody else's team.
No, I'm not saying, listen. I'm not saying he's going to be on my team, but I'm saying as someone who hated Bo Nix, as someone who thought that he should be going in the second round or later, him getting selected as the 12th overall pick in the draft, was it a reach for the Broncos?
I mean, it was obviously a reach. They were worried about the Raiders behind them and the Seahawks behind them. So all the people that are saying, "Oh, you could have waited till the second for that," I don't think they could have. I think if that's who you wanted and you were there, you had to take him. But I don't really think it changes my viewpoint on Bo Nix. Am I more likely to give him a shot now? Yeah, definitely. If JJ and Penix are off the board and I'm like 205, let's say, and it's so hard to get like a quarterback. Like let's put a situation where it's like you have the 105 and Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Caleb Williams are all gone, and you don't want to reach for like Michael Penix or JJ McCarthy, and you're not in the position to get them really, then you could, just play the draft and get Bo Nix at like the 205 if you could get him there. We'll have to see where his ADP is. And you're getting a starting quarterback this year, so
I think before he was either going late second at the very earliest or in the third round. So I think you have to move him up, but I'm not taking him. But if the value's right and he drops,
like I said, at the 205, like if his ADP is like the 205 and it's not above that, I might have some Bo Nix shares, not because I like the guy, but because it's a quarterback and you're drafting in the middle of the second. Like, what other pick is going to hit there outside of like a Puka Nacua or like a running back there? I mean, you could get, like an Amon-Ra or something like that, but chances are, if any of those picks are going to rise in value, it's going to be Bo Nix. So I think, as weird as it sounds, I might get some Bo Nix this year, just if he's there at like that kind of no man's land in the second.
Right. What does it do for his wide receivers? Who
is his wide? Because he doesn't have Jerry Jeudy anymore. So Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims.
Sutton. Are we Greg Dulcich? Are we feeling? I mean, we've got to be feeling better than we were with Zach Wilson. Is it the same level of talent as a Zach Wilson?
I mean, is Bo Nix even going to beat out Zach Wilson?
We'll see.
I don't think it really matters. I think you're not trying to draft any of those guys as like, somebody that you want to start every week anyways. Maybe the only guy I could think of is maybe Cortland Sutton. Like, he should be somebody that's probably on your team most weeks. But I don't see a situation where it helps them at all. So I think just kind of fade all Broncos offense right now until we see it.
The Las Vegas Raiders.
Don't want to talk about this one.
Las Vegas Raiders decide to destroy all of our Michael Mayer shares.
I was so happy to have Michael Mayer this year.
I was a so huge happy. Michael Mayer fan, and this was, you know what this was? This was like maybe not on the same level, but last year with Zach Charbonnet going to the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I can see what you're
with
saying.
Kenneth Walker.
I can see what you're saying.
It's one of those things where you were so hyped up about Michael Mayer. And I'm not saying Michael Mayer was crazy for fantasy this last season, but he was definitely a great tight end prospect in a stacked tight end class. And he was breaking out towards the end of the season. So there was promise for his sophomore season in the NFL. But Brock Bowers is now a part of that tight end room.
Well, it kind of sucks because it's not good for Brock Bowers, and it's definitely not good for Michael Mayer. So
I do think that Brock Bowers is still fine. I don't think it was the ideal landing spot for Brock Bowers, but I do think the way that the Bulldogs used Brock Bowers in a way where they would use him in screens and in reverses and running the ball, and that you can use Brock Bowers in so many different ways. So
I mean, they're going to have some 12 personnel going on. I'm trying to think. You have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers.
Yep.
Michael Mayer. You're definitely going to see 12 personnel because I can't even tell you who their number 3 wide receiver is right now. So you're definitely going to have 12 personnel.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who the third wide receiver is. So
you're definitely going to
be in a lot of 12 personnel.
And I mean, let's be real, that coach is going to be in a position where he just has to try to do things to win games. And maybe doing those things is trying to do those sweeps and stuff with Brock Bowers. So I maybe there's a way that it's not terrible for Brock Bowers, but I mean, you have to come away still loving Brock Bowers as the tight end 1, still drafting him as the tight end 1 because there isn't really any other tight ends. There's one. But he has to fall down the board at least at least a pick or 2 for Dynasty, right?
I do think people are going to fade him a little bit.
You're for sure taking Rome Odunze over Brock Bowers now.
I would say so. I do think there's the concern that even just rookie tight ends in general.
Yeah, so you have Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. So that's 6. So yeah, Brock Bowers is going to go around like the 107.
It does. It tanks his stock a little bit. That's kind of where he was going already. So it's.
Yeah, but you could see some people kind of get squirrely with him and go like 105, 104 even. So it's definitely going to hurt his value. I'm in a really big predicament now because the one league that I have the most draft picks in, I was relying as Michael Mayer as my tight end. And I really kind of wanted to draft Brock Bowers, but now it's like if I draft Brock Bowers, then my backup tight end is Michael Mayer, and I need to figure out what I'm going to do there. So maybe I'm hoping he does fall so I can just draft him with a later pick.
He still went as a tight end as the 13th overall pick in the draft.
I mean, you can't hate. It's not. Brock Bowers doesn't get to control where he goes.
Even Sam Laporta last year was going at the end of the first.
Yeah, Sam Laporta did unheard of things as a rookie tight end. So
I'm not saying he's Sam Laporta, but I'm saying he got drafted sooner than Sam Laporta did in the draft.
And I don't see. Do you see a situation where he comes out and because being top 5 tight end isn't crazy? Do you foresee a possibility of him being a top 5 tight end this year?
Who's their quarterback?
AOC or what's his name? I can't even think.
Gardner Minshew.
Oh no, they do have Gardner Minshew, don't they?
Gardner Minshew. So
yeah,
I could see a scenario where Brock Bowers has a top 5 rookie season. Yeah, I could see
with
it.
Gardner Minshew, that's actually not terrible.
I think Brock Bowers is going to be faded to the point where he may become a value.
Yeah, and and I'll be definitely drafting him at that point as well.
At pick number 23, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Brian Thomas Jr. And I really like this spot. So coming into this season, I think we were all expecting Christian Kirk to be the guy that would lead the team in targets. But I think Brian Thomas Jr. being drafted to the Jags, you could make an argument that he could be the guy for the Jags.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to be more of an impact than Calvin Ridley was last season. Because Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk were kind of so similar in what they could do, kind of like more of like field stretchers. Like, yeah, they can... I don't like saying that they're not underneath guys, but they prototypically are not underneath guys. And Brian Thomas is more of... He can line up anywhere on the field and do that underneath stuff. So I think you could have a possibility where Christian Kirk is still like that field stretcher that's going down the field and then do some stuff underneath with Brian Thomas. And Brian Thomas could easily get more like targets and receptions than Christian Kirk, but then those targets and receptions that Christian Kirk gets are going to be more valuable.
The receptions that Christian Kirk gets are going to be more valuable?
Yeah, because if Christian Kirk is getting thrown the ball, it's because he's running like, he's catching it like 15, 20 yards down the field, where like Brian Thomas can catch like a 5-yard in or like a 5-yard out.
It's funny you say that, because I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is actually kind of similar to those guys as far as like catching passes down the field. Yes.
Than Christian Kirk. He can run, he can dig his feet into the ground and pivot better. So he's inevitably going to be used more in the middle of the field underneath stuff than Christian Kirk and Zay Jones.
He's definitely more of a put together all around wide receiver than Christian Kirk was coming out. Now,
I do think he's the wide receiver 1 on that team now. He's going to be drafted as the wide receiver 1. Zay Jones is still going to have relevancy. Christian Kirk is still going to be a value because he's always a value. And Evan Ingram is still going to be a value at tight end. I don't draft Brian Thomas as if he's Calvin Ridley, maybe a little bit higher, and nothing really changes, I don't think, on that team.
For Dynasty, Brian Thomas is the one. And for redraft, I think you could still make an argument that at the beginning of the season, Christian Kirk is still the guy. And then as the season goes along, I expect Brian Thomas Jr. to be that guy. So is Brian Thomas Jr. still the wide receiver 4 for this class?
Trying to think about where the other ones went off the top of my head. And I think, yes. I would almost take Brian Thomas Jr. over Brock Bowers.
Oh, no. See, this is what I'm talking about with the fading for Brock Bowers. Yeah, I think Brian Thomas Jr. he's still the 4 for me. And I think there was a reason why we all kind of had him over some of the other guys.
Oh, well, I will. He is still the wide receiver 4 for me, but there is another wide receiver that has the possibility of overtaking him in value just because he went to the Chiefs and he's really fast. So he's the wide receiver 4 for me, but I actually don't know what the dynasty landscape will be. I don't know if it'll be Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas as the wide receiver 4.
So Xavier Worthy goes not at 32, but at 28 after the Chiefs trade up with the Bills, who are also wide receiver needy, and they get Xavier Worthy. I mean, this is Tyreek Hill 2.0, right?
3.0 at this point.
3.0. So he didn't go 19 like he did to the Chiefs in our mock draft, but the Chiefs did trade up for him. I don't know what it was, but Xavier Worthy was just so connected to the Chiefs.
Speed. It was the speed. That's exactly what it was.
It was like, dude, this guy has speed. And I think it was just because we were all like, all right, he's going at the end of the first. But I mean, this is great for Xavier Worthy. So Xavier Worthy is now close to Brian Thomas. I wouldn't put him over Brian Thomas, but I think they're in the same tier now, for sure.
I would still take one other wide receiver, as much as I don't want to say it, but I would still take one wide. I just cannot get on the Xavier Worthy train. I really can't.
You still don't like it?
No, I still don't like it. I don't even know if I had the possibility, like the option of drafting him, if I could even draft him. Maybe in the second, but there's no way I'm ever going to get him in the second.
There's no way that Xavier is worthy is dropping to the second.
Like, give me JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix if I'm in the situation where those two quarterbacks and Xavier Worthy. I'm drafting the two quarterbacks. Brian Thomas, I'm taking Brian Thomas. Brock Bowers, I'm taking Brock Bowers. I'm probably taking a running back before I take Xavier Worthy.
Obviously, Xavier Worthy is a burner. So he's going to come in, and I just like the connection. I liked Xavier Worthy's age-adjusted production profile. And I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, just because he had this fast 40, I'm going to fade him because he's going to be like John Ross or something like that.
It's not that. It's just I just can't get behind him as a prospect, and we see it every year where whoever goes to Kansas City is just overhyped. But so a lot of it isn't even...
This is the time. Right here. This is the one.
I'll eat humble pie. I'll eat humble pie if it's wrong. I'm not paying the price of the Kansas City Chiefs tax of what that did to Xavier Worthy.
So it was getting late at the end of the first round.
Yeah.
And everybody was kind of tuning out of the draft, but there are still picks to be made. And at pick 31,
I'm just going to go ahead and take a victory lap. I need to take a victory lap for this one. I have to.
Okay, I think these are actually some of the most interesting picks.
I mean, I told you I liked this player. I liked these next two players.
So Ricky Pearsall goes to the San Francisco 49ers at pick 31. This is interesting with the Brandon Ayuk situation.
Did you see I don't know if it was on Sleeper or ESPN or NFL, but anyway, I got a news blurb that said that the 49ers are more keen to trade Deebo Samuel than they are Brandon Ayuk.
I did not see that. No.
Yeah, I got that news blurb today. I think it was from Sleeper. I did not check to see who it was, if it was notable or anything, but that did come across as a notification today.
It definitely tells us that there are trade talks being had with one of their wide receivers, and that they're probably thinking about moving off of either Brandon Ayuk or Deebo. So Ricky Pearsall, I want to go over just a couple things with Ricky Pearsall real quick, because
we just want to talk about how much of a stud he is.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So when you watch his film, he's electric, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if you saw the one-handed grab that he had.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, he's I love Ricky Pearsall.
Dude is a beast on film. Now, he kind of started going up the board whenever he showed up at the combine, and he had a 4.41 40, a 42-inch vertical, which is in the 98th percentile, a 6.643 cone, which is in the 94th percentile, and a broad jump of 129 inches. That's in the 92nd percentile.
Yeah, man's a stud.
He finished with a RAS score, relative athletic score, of 9.78.
He's the Jelani Woods of wide receivers, then. That's what you're trying to say?
Let's not compare him to Jelani Woods, because Jelani Woods hasn't panned out. But yes, he is a freak, and I think that part of his game really shows up on film, and the fact that he is going in the first is huge for him. I mean, that is huge.
Does he go in the first of dynasty drafts, though, or is he move up from the third to the second?
Okay, so this is something we need to talk about, because we've talked about so many people that have gone in the first. You have guys that we weren't expecting to go in the first. This is just a stacked fantasy class. This is a stacked dynasty class, a stacked rookie class.
Yeah,
Dynasty.
we say it every year. I don't want to like fall into that rhythm of saying, but apparently the 2025 class is pretty terrible. So let's just go ahead and just talk about how good this class is for 2 years.
This class, I say it. In the past I've said it, but this class right now, after just the first round, we haven't even gotten into the second. There were 7 wide receivers selected.
7. That's crazy. I mean, that's almost
round.
25% of the draft. That's almost 25% of the draft was just wide receiver.
Historic. That's got to be historic.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it's going to be hard, right? Because we're really hyped up about Ricky Pearsall, but there's only so far up he can move because you have all of these guys that still went in the first. It's not like one of these guys dropped to the second round.
Well, you were talking about who is going to be the biggest riser in the NFL draft, about Michael Penix, and that's who I was kind of like, I don't know. I think Ricky Pearsall is going to rise the most.
So I would say Ricky Pearsall has probably risen the most. The only reason I was saying Michael Penix was just from like an elite, more of an elite level rise. You know how like when you're more up the board in fantasy, like it's harder to move up the higher up you go in dynasty value.
Yeah.
So that's all I meant with Michael Penix. But
yeah.
Ricky Pearsall, this is huge. I mean, and it's not like he's going to, the Panthers. He goes
to the 49ers.
He goes to the 49ers. And listen, man, the 49ers know what they're doing. Like they're a good organization. They have Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's going to throw the ball around. He's going to distribute the ball well. Now, they have a lot of weapons, so I'm not saying he's going to go crazy his rookie season. But, yeah, this is great for Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, phenomenal. He's definitely at least an early second, I would have to assume, like 202, 203.
For sure. Yeah, he's definitely at the 2. Maybe somebody likes him enough to sneak him into the first round.
49ers fans. M-Long.
Yeah, 49ers fans. But yeah, you have to move him up. You do. I mean, it just, and like I said, there's so many people at the top that it's going to be harder and harder to push these guys up. But I like Ricky Pearsall. He's an athletic guy.
I mean, I think you asked me on the last show if there was one guy I would have liked to have seen go in that mock draft that we did, and I think I did say Ricky Pearsall. I think Ricky Pearsall was I think what's funny is I think I said Xavier Legette and Ricky Pearsall.
Yes, you did. You did. I remember you saying Xavier Legette for sure. But the only thing about Ricky Pearsall, he was a 5-year guy in college. That was because I was trying to find a knock on him before we got on, and that was really the only knock, is that he's a little older. And he didn't have the greatest production profile. So for fantasy, it is a little concerning with his production profile, but very good. It really does help his stock that he went in the first. Like, that's huge. So next, that was pick number 31. This is when we were all just like, we're just chilling. Like, we're trying to keep our eyes open at the end of the draft. And then at pick 32, the Panthers trade up to go and get their guy and get weapons for Bryce Young. And is it Adonai Mitchell? Is it Lad McConkey? No, it's not. It's Xavier Legette going to the Panthers. The absolute stud of an athlete, the guy who looks like DK Metcalf on tape, goes higher in the draft than DK even did in his draft. Production wise, he wasn't that great of a prospect, similar to Ricky Pearsall, really. But it seems like these teams really fell in love with just the athletic profile of these guys. And I remember on our last pod literally saying, "Oh, an Xavier Legette guy."
Yeah.
And here we are at pick 32, dude.
Xavier Legette is he's such a stud.
I loved his tape, and I'm shocked. Like, I really am shocked that he went this high. I would have been shocked if he went at the top of the second. Man, these both Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette are just going to skyrocket in value compared to where they were.
Ricky Pearsall is going to go above Xavier Legette, but Xavier Legette could sneakily be a lot better than Ricky Pearsall this season.
Yeah, I love the athletic part of their game. So it's going to be really interesting. I think everything we said about Ricky Pearsall is probably similar to what we'll have to say about Xavier Legette as far as their value is concerned. But I do want to talk about kind of the losers there, because we were expecting Adonai Mitchell and Ladd McConkey in their place. So it's interesting because those were the guys I personally was actually the most worried about falling in value. Because I feel like every year we're like, oh, these are the wide receivers going at the top of the second. And then it's hard to predict those guys because they're not these bona fide studs that are going in the first. So it's kind of like,
I think
if you're
team meetings go a long ways when you get to this part of the draft, because like Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, like they could be like not total like fuck offs, but they can be like, you know, a little bit more cocky, a little bit more like, you know, your typical wide receiver, what is it, like sass, I guess you would say.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's really hard once you get to this point, because these guys are in such a tight grouping of their athletic abilities and what they did in college, that I think the team meetings do make a big difference. So I think one thing that you could walk away from is that, you know, the NFL teams liked who these people were better. And that's not to say like Ladd McConkey and the other guy that they weren't better prospects, but maybe and it has a lot to do with how they mesh with the team too. But maybe just the people who are doing the interviews were just really astounded with who they are, you know, and they wowed them in the interview process.
I think the Senior Bowl was also a big part of it, especially for Ricky Pearsall. I think that's
for Ricky Pearsall for sure. Yeah.
He started going off, and I think teams, the 49ers fell in love with him at the Senior Bowl probably. Now, as far as the second round, so we're waiting for Adonai Mitchell. We're waiting for Ladd McConkey. We're waiting for Trey Benson.
Jonathan Brooks.
Blake Corum, maybe. We're waiting on those guys, and we're ready for... that about covers it for the first round. Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I'm just really happy with the Cardinals. I had it in my mind that I was just okay with whatever they did. But then, you know, it's kind of like what they say, where pick two things that you think you don't care about, and then you start to hope for the one that you really do. And the closer we got to the draft, the more I was like, just give me Marvin Harrison, just give me Marvin Harrison, just give me Marvin Harrison.
That was the deepest shit. What did you just say?
You know, like
that was the deepest shit I've ever heard.
There's like the saying, right? Like, let's say you really want to go to like just something really random, like McDonald's or Burger King, and they say, okay, well, like put one of them on heads, put one of them on tails, and then while the coin is flipping, before you look at the coin, think about where you want to eat, and then that's where you just go and eat. You don't even look at the coin.
I see.
Some deep philosophical stuff.
Do this. I need to do this with my wife so I can figure out where she wants to eat.
Isn't it just whatever has Diet Coke?
Right. Yeah. Oh, man. No, that's good. That's going to wrap it up for today's pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Also, follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Sleeper Dynasty. Peace.